Hello and welcome to the Daily Grind here on Latte Firm. It's day 11. Well, not day 11 of the summer window because it shut yesterday for half time, but it's Clive from the Arsenal Vision podcast. My man, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's a very surreal moment for me, Clive. I was upstairs doing some stuff. I was listening to you guys on the Arsenal Vision podcast, watching you on Spotify, and then up you pop in a text saying I'm ready. So I'm really excited. Thanks so much for joining me. Really good to have you here. On today's show, Clive, I just want to get your thoughts on the season, how it ended, and what the activity should be, must be, needs to be this summer before we go again next year. But first of all, it's been some time since the Premier League ended. I know you love all sorts of sport, but has it been nice to kind of switch off from the Arsenal men's team?
Yeah, I do love other sports, and I love this time of year. I actually think I enjoy the summer almost as much as I enjoy the season because it gives you time to think. And when you're an Arsenal person, when the things happening around your club, my natural DNA is I defend the club. Right, that's my first thing. That's the first go. Then you think it through. Then you think, But the way I was brought up, mate, if you're Arsenal, you're fine by me, right? And that's it. And we look after each other. So that's very much around me when we're playing. And then time goes on, you think it through, and you can see the issues a little bit more clearly, and then you try to articulate them. So that's how I normally go for a season. But in the summer, I'm a little bit more sort of analytical and reflective because you have time to think, and the transfer window's open, so you have opportunities for change. I often feel during the season, you can't change anything, but how can you adapt? You can't buy anybody, but how can you adapt? How can you find solutions? So I love this time of year, and I love sort of broadening my thought processes using other sports, how they manage groups, what the psychology is, how they manage their health, how they manage their mental health, and seeing the challenges that other sports have with schedules and things like that. And it brings you back to your own sport and gives you some perspective. And I think it's a really important time for my head to sort of get that perspective because we're all nuts, right? We're Arsenal nuts, aren't we? Let's be honest, right? Every single thing that comes out, we get engulfed by it. So how do you stay calm? How do you get that perspective? And this is a really important time for me to get that. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing all summer.
Well, enjoy it, my friend. And there's a long few weeks without any sort of international tournament, so it's quite nice to have that time away. And it was quite a grueling season, Clive, as I just bring up the slides. And I do want to kind of take your mind back to some of the frustrations and sort of misery that we had. I mean, look, there's been deep dive analysis everywhere you look. Everyone's having their say on Arsenal. But what are your sort of high level thoughts on how the season kind of panned out for Arsenal and where you kind of think it all went wrong for us?
There's many points. You can find your point. But for me, when I first started to realise things were going wrong, funny enough, it was just a Saturday game against Brighton at home. And I remember it clearly, sunny day. And it just turned out after half time, we 1-0 up. We were just about to turn the screw to make it 2-0. Sending off. Odegaard got a knock in that game. He goes to international duty. He gets hurt proper. I think the two things are linked. We lose him for 2 months. We lose how we play. We grind out some results, but we're not flowing. People are not enjoying it. And then the red card situations, suspension situations, and just late goals we were getting the year before we were not getting, so we're drawing games. And then it just rolled on. Declan Rice wasn't fit at the start of the season because of the Euros. And then you start to think, this is different. The league phase of the Champions League had changed. The quality of teams we were playing, I think, were higher. Then there was 2 extra games. We qualified for the League Cup semi-finals. So the January previously, we played 3 games, but this January we played 9 games. During that January, we lost people. We took gambles in the transfer market regarding strikers. Those gambles absolutely exploded in our faces. Suddenly, we're looking at a situation where Liverpool are under no pressure. And by the way, let's see how they cope when they're under pressure. And we suddenly had to switch focus slightly. Well, maybe the league sort of told us to switch focus to the Champions League. And while we're in despair, we have maybe some of the greatest nights we've ever had around Madrid. And seriously, it was that good. So yeah, it's not been great, but within those not great weeks, there have been some highlights, particularly in Europe. Sporting Lisbon was great, beating West Ham 5-6 was great. There have been moments. Spurs away is always nice,
Oh yeah.
And it's just been there's been some moments there, right? He beat Spurs home and away. You should never dismiss that, right? Because when it goes the other way, trust me, it'll hurt. So but it's not what we hoped for. But it was sort of explainable. And FK, I use the word explainable. And as I'm using that word, it's explainable, but someone else with a slightly different mindset may say, but Clive, they're just excuses. So explanation versus excuses, that's the thing. That's a line I try to traverse, but it's the truth, right? It's the truth. What could we have done? So if you ask me honestly, I think we misread the strength of the schedule, but it was new for everybody, and League Cup don't need that in January. Now there's 2 Champions League games in January. That's changes the whole demographic for me, schedule wise. We misread that. We gambled on health and fitness, particularly in certain areas, and it didn't work out. But I was looking at Liverpool squad today, and they gambled in certain areas. Their fullbacks are weak. Their centre backs, there's no centre back depth of any quality, and they sort of got away with it. And so they don't. It doesn't matter, right? So whatever happens, whatever your season is and what you think is, you just got to win, right? You've just got to win, and I think that's my team talk for next year. Just win, right? It doesn't really matter, because everything else is just it's all flowers around the edge of the cake, right? Just win, and then everything is resolved.
I like the way that you use the word explainable. I think there doesn't need to be too much deep dive analysis on what went wrong. You kind of articulated it. We've had a horrifically sort of list of a collection of injuries that have really hit us hard. There were some decisions that went against us. We weren't getting the rub of the green. And a lot of things just sort of didn't go our way last season. The 2 years prior to that, fantastic, insane sort of journey, memories, a lot of fortune. Things went our way. We kept our core group of players largely sort of fit. There are a couple of things that I think the club and Mikel need to do better at, and that is, that the transfer windows that we saw last summer, I thought we fumbled the bag. January came and went, and of course Saka got injured before Christmas. Jesus got injured sort of early in Jan, and then of course Kai Havertz did a ping shortly after the window shut. So that is a bit of bad luck. And you talk about Liverpool, Arne Slot, one of his strengths, to be fair to him, is that constant rotation, trying to sort of save minutes in legs for that last 15, 20 minutes for key players. He made lots of changes to forwards in particular. It's easy to do so when you've got the options. But there are a couple of things there that I think Arsenal can take and learn before they go into next season. And talking of which, there's a lot of pressure on Arsenal now, Clive. And, everyone's talked about Mikel Arteta. He's been at the helm. He's building, as Thierry Henry said, and the building is now quite tall. I had a question from Raphael, catching off one of our Patreon members, who sort of asked, how do you feel about direction of travel with the club? Are you firmly behind the gaffer? Do you believe in this process? Do you think the building will eventually be built and will be one that everybody looks on in awe?
Yeah, I'm an Arsenal man first and foremost, right? So I'm firmly behind what we're trying to achieve. And as long as we are trying, there was a period when I wondered if we were even trying, when we were in dual ownership and we weren't really investing at the levels that you need to invest. And we were just trying to stay at the top end of the league. That wasn't working out. So we had to make changes. People lose jobs when you're outside of the European places, right? So I'm pleased that we're trying. I'm pleased we're going in the right direction. So what is that direction? Right. So I was thinking about this actually just now. What is the direction that Arsenal are going to be identified as a club and as a team? What do we look like to the outside world? Now, defensively, we've had the best defensive league for the last 2 years. We scored, I don't know how many less goals this year than last year. So the team talks are easy. What we need to add, everyone can see we need to see strikers. So let's pat yourself on the back. But how are we going to be defined? So if you look at, say, Spain, for example, we have a very similar style. They have Fabian Ruiz. We have Declan Rice in midfield. They have Zubamendi. Well, we're going to have him soon. They have Pedri as the second, third midfielder. We have Martin Odegaard. They have 2 wide players. They have a centre forward. They have defenders happy on the ball and punchy fullbacks. We have all of that. And we have their goalkeeper. We can play with 11 players. So we are basically very much like on the Spanish model. We were maybe, I call us Spain with muscles. That's what I call us. That's going to be our identity. Then for me, invest in your identity. If you're going to have 2 wide men, obviously Spain can rock up with the 2 wide men, which we can all name, Yamal and Nico Williams. They play their 5-6 games, any tournament they need to play, and they win it and go home. Right? So because they're that good. We played 58 games last year, I believe. 58, 59. We can't have the two wingers in the high sprint positions going up and down. It can't happen. We must learn. So this is who we are. We must invest in who we are and make sure we have cover for those people that change our day. The game changers at the top end of the pitch. And I think we've made sure we had depth at the back end of the pitch. And by the way, that's been severely tested by injury.
Mm.
You know, we've got a level of depth in midfield, although we have an over reliance on Martin Odegaard. But we don't have enough offensive depth. And I think that's so important. I often use this line, FK, from my coaching days. I never worry about coaching players or investing in players or reading players or developing players. The worst feeling you have as a coach, I promise you, apart from just losing, is when you're on the sideline and you turn around to the players behind you and you don't have the options to change it. And that's where we were at PSG at home. Our bench was incredibly weak. We all hoped to win the Champions League, but if you look at that bench in our home game, mate, how could we win the Champions League with that? You know? And we have to be realistic. If we want these big things, then we have to really be that team. We have to be that team tactically, invest in having depth in those forward areas so we can make teams beat us twice. You know? And you can't look at the 14 draws this year. A lot, if you're able to change your offensive face, we're not having 14 draws. What that's telling you is we have a really strong floor, but we maybe need to invest more in our ceiling because the two are getting closer together. So, but I'm cool with that. And I say that with a calm voice because that's part of it, right? That's hindsight where, you know, when I was in Lisbon and we stuck 5 in their net, I wouldn't have said this. Do you see what I mean? And you look at the team that played in Lisbon, you know, it was a high level team. Everyone was fit. Calafiori played left back. I think Timber played right back. You can name the front six. Partey played DM, since the centre DM, and the centre backs. You know who they are.
Yeah.
And we stuck 5 in their net, and there was not a problem with that team. Rocked up to West Ham on a Saturday, stuck 5 in their net. You know, you've got to have your players. You've got to have your depth. There's not much wrong if we have the quality. We need more depth in quality.
Well, let's talk about the action that the club need to take and adding this sort of depth and quality to the squad. I mean, first up, we'll start in the goalkeeping zone. Kepa, formerly of Bournemouth, of course, this year on loan, currently of Chelsea, formerly of Real Madrid, is on his way. Apparently £5 million, David Ornstein has reported. Now, we were linked with Joan Garcia, who's now going to Barcelona as potentially a new number one. And, you know, you've got David Raya there, who's, you know, back-to-back Golden Glove winner. What are your thoughts on the fact that we've A, gone for Kepa, and B, now it seems we've gone for an established number two? Or were you hoping for someone to come in and really push David Raya to be that number one?
You know what? This is one of the best shouts I've ever had as a podcaster, right? So on the Vision, we do something called Director of Football, right? Where you have some money, you sell players and you buy players, etc., etc. And we were doing this, and I just read somewhere before it that Kepa had a 5 million release clause. I wasn't sure if it was even true, but I thought, you know what? I like that. I like that idea. You know, another Basque guy into the Spanish group with, you know, Spanish manager, Spanish first goalkeeper. I'm thinking this could work. So I said it. At no time we were linked at that time, and I said it, and just to make the money stretch, right? And I said it, and actually, I thought it was a really good idea. But I thought he would stay at Bournemouth. I didn't realise that, and then it came into fruition. So everyone thinks I'm like seeing the future or an ITK or whatever, but actually, I think it's a fantastic move. Because right now we sit here, we don't know if we need a new centre mid. We don't know the cost of the left-sided player. And so to be able to put this away with somebody who had a good Premiership season, if you watch him play, he can play. And that's very important to us. We're used to playing with 11 now. We go back to our keeper a lot as a release valve. And he can play. I think it's a really smart move. Financially, it's smart. If you think about what we want to achieve, it's almost like the second team is as important as the first team. And if everyone wants their cups and their league cup, well, you know, how are we going to get them? You know, unless we have people who can go and get it. So he's got 25 games ahead of him. And that keeps our first team goalkeeper really fresh. So I love this move. I really do.
That's a really salient point for me, Clive. And for the longest time, I never really understood when Arsene Wenger and other managers used to talk about mental fatigue for a goalkeeper. You know, I
Mm,
always just thought, goalkeeper, how can you be mentally, how can you be fatigued mentally or even physically? And now you see the concentration. We're lucky we go to the games. I sit North Bank Lower. I
yeah,
observe the David Raya is just so on it all the time. Like towards the back end of the season, we saw a couple of uncharacteristic mistakes,
yeah,
loose balls. We've seen that. We've made a lot was made of it. And now I really get it. And so 5 million for me, really good value. Premier League, proven, acclimatized. You talk about the Spanish bond there, 30 years old. He's absolutely as good as you can get as a number 2. So I'm really content with that. Joan Garcia, obviously now looking to sign for Barcelona. And I know we've replaced number 1s in the past, but I think David Raya's done a fantastic job. And to win 2 Golden Gloves back to back, phenomenal.
yeah.
If we move up the pitch, we talked about how tight we were defensively. So I want to focus on the midfield side. Now, news broke yesterday, David Ornstein again saying that Arsenal are confident we're going to get our man, Martin Zubamendi. Did a feature on him yesterday with George of the Canon podcast viewers, in case you want to check that out. It's on the channel feed. High level thoughts on this guy? You like what you see?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you gotta like what you see, right? Yeah, he's very, very good. You know, when we originally linked with him, I thought let's have a good closer look. But to be honest, if you look at the Euro final, that showed everything you need to know how he controls that.
Mm.
So what does he bring in my head to what we don't? Well, not say what we don't have. What does he bring as a 25-year-old? He's got some bounce in his legs, so he can travel and he can go through people, which is good. People looked at him and thought maybe he's not physical enough, but you can find data now, FK, and the aerial data is quite good. He drops in the centre half really nicely. What's the thing that I see that I really, really like? And because again, if you watch games and we are there and we can see the runs off the ball and the amount of times they get ignored, right? And we think, come on, we are a little bit sometimes lack directness, you know, and sometimes that's technical. Because, you know, if I ask you now, have you ever seen Declan Rice do a clip pass down the line curved with his left foot? Probably not. Have you seen similar from Thomas Partey? Probably not. Martin Odegaard's quite one-footed as well. So we sort of know his moves. And so I do think we have some wonderful talents in there and I like them all. But I think there's a technical limitation to them. And by that, I mean seeing the opportunity to pass. So what Zubimendi has 2 or 3 things I really like. He's very two-footed, but he's also got all of the clubs in both feet. So for those who played football, your weak foot can't do what your strong foot can do. So your weak foot, you may not be able to backspin it down the line. You know, you may not be able to clip it in the same way on your weak foot. He can do that. And what that means is when the opportunity is there to pass, he'll take it. At the top level, 1 or 2 seconds, you shift it onto your strong side and pass it. That gap has shut down immediately. So I think he's very two-footed and has a real good vision of the pitch, which I really like. Also, another thing he does, I like his line height. So by that I mean he knows when to drop in, but also knows how to back up the play. So his line height is really good, and how he creates an angle to receive the ball. So if you watch him, he always seems to be just about in contact with the unit, and we are a very strong unit, and we're quite compact. And I really like the fact that he understands the rhythm. And I often use the word when I talk about Thomas Partey in this position. There's a rhythm to that. There's a drum beat to that. And a good player plays to a beat in that position, and he controls the beat, you know, but he's able to solve things technically because he's got 2 feet. And I really, really am excited, you know. 20 years ago, you wouldn't have heard these words come out of my mouth because all I wanted was Patrick Vieira at the base of the team with Gilberto. As far as I was concerned, they're the best 2 players in the world. But back in the day, when we didn't build out from the back and we kicked it to the halfway line and we first ball headers and then we started to play, the game has changed now. It's completely changed tactically, what you can do, how you stretch a pitch out. It's completely changed. And these are the players now which I feel are the most important players in the team because they control your play. So this is the most exciting signing for me of the summer.
Wow. That is bold sort of praise for for Martin Zubimendi. I'm excited. I sort of picture him as a sort of volume dial in terms of tempo. You know, I think there's going to be in-game scenarios where he just kind of like just runs things like a quarterback and just controls how fast, how quick, how high we can move the ball. And then that sort of, you know, just controlling it and flattening it and just sort of, you know, really sort of dictating that. I can't wait to see him. Jorginho's obviously moved away. Fabio Vieira is on loan. Really keen to get your thoughts on whether you'd integrate him back into the squad. I think he's going to go to the FIFA World Club Cup. So that's going to be interesting. Do you think, though, we're still short? I mean, Thomas Partey was announced on the release list as per the Premier League, but I believe there are ongoing conversations around maybe an extension for him. But if he were to stay, if Fabio Vieira is to be integrated back into Arsenal, if Zubimendi does come in, what are we lacking, Clive, in midfield?
On Thomas Partey, great season for him. Probably, I think, the most appearances he's made in all his time. So, thinks he's had his operation on that thigh. Fitness has been really, really good. So that tells me we've discovered what the problem really was, which really took him out at critical times. Really good season, but you often hear me talking at FK. You know me long enough. I'm always up for renewal.
Yeah,
and I think you heard me say the words. In any high performance team model, you have to know when to renew. Now, for Arsenal now, they've got financial restrictions like everybody has. It probably makes sense for them to offer him a reduced wage, a reduced role in the squad, and make it incentivized based. That's the smart thing to do, because then you can save your cash for next year when you want to go for your main targets in that position, and allows Zubimendi time to settle in. Is Thomas Partey going to accept that reduced role and reduced wage? Well, we're finding out, right? If he goes, and that's what happens, and I'm absolutely fine with it, because I think he's a really good player. I'm also up for doing something new. We've come second 3 times in a row. I would have dreamt of that 5 years ago, but now I've got used to it. I want number 1. So how are we going to get there? By doing exactly the same thing or doing something different? For me, slightly different. And create a new offensive face of people. In midfield, for me, the number 1 thing I've got a concern about is, okay, if Partey goes, who are we going to get? I'm not too worried, because they're not dumb. They'll find somebody. But for me, we live and die with Martin Odegaard. And I think that needs to be challenged, because single points don't excite me, right? So as soon as I see one, I'm thinking, how can I backfill it? So I think Martin Odegaard, I use his phrase, has been our point guard back to basketball for a long time. I'd like to see a bit more of a shooting guard in that position, someone who takes more shots. So it's up to him how he wants to do it, and I think he knows it. I think his form is coming back. I think he's having a really positive period with Norway, and I think he's had some tough times in Norway. Positive periods with them. That's going to bring him along. He wants to go to the World Cup. That's going to take his attention, because he's a skipper. We have to make sure that we don't live and die with him every minute, because I think it restricts us tactically, and it's okay. We got to be comfortable if he sits for a game, because we watched him drag himself around the pitch late in the season and he wasn't right. So why can't he be right? You know, why can't he rest every now and again? It's the same for Saka as well. So I want to see differences in that position. If that means Marino plays there on occasions, if that means Ethan plays there on occasions, if that means Havertz plays there on occasion, I think that's the chance to change us in that position. So that's what I'm looking for this season.
Yeah, the creativity obviously sort of stands out as a big requirement for us. You know, for me personally, I want a bit more power, a bit more dynamism in midfield. You know, we rely on Declan Rice. I don't know how many seasons he's going to play without doing something, you know, God forbid, but as in physically. And I just wish we'd had all the money in the world to go out and get a Morgan Rogers. But the creativity point is really key. And there's been lots of talk about Ranieri stepping into those shoes, Fabio Vieira maybe, but that is something we need to address. I guess on the end of that creativity, and just to kind of wrap things up, I want to focus on the final third, which is obviously pressure on Andrea Berta. First of all, he's arrived. He's doing some really good things behind the scenes, coaching staff, Gabriel's contract. There's talks about Saka and Saliba now progressing nicely, depending on who you sort of believe. But the big one, this is the one that all the forwards are licking their lips around, is, you know, who do we bring in either as wide forwards? We link with Rodrigo and so many others, I see Leroy Sané is finally not on the menu now. He's finally signed with Galatasaray,
She's good.
but which is very good. But centre forwards wise, I mean, Šeško, Gyökeres, Ollie Watkins is still there. What are you expecting in that final third, Clive? Well, let me ask differently. What do you want? What's the sort of profile of player that you really want that's going to take Arsenal from number 2 to number 1?
Well, one of the feedbacks that we listen to people out there, the Jamie Carragher's, etc., and when they speak about our team, we all bristle, and one thing he said, that sometimes feedback is always a hint of truth in it. And one thing he said was, I wonder if Mikel Arteta's Arsenal has peaked at the start of 2024. And I bristled straight away in that 18-game run, when we had 16 wins, 1 draw, 1 defeat. And didn't quite get to the title, but we were fantastic during that period. And during that period, we played Kai Havertz at centre forward. And maybe we lost that league that season because it took us too long to get him there. Because once he was there, I felt our direction of travel changed. So again, you learn these things in hindsight. If you want to blame the manager, feel free. But then he found it, and then we got there, and then you think, crikey, this really works. So that summer, when we were looking at Benjamin Sesko, I said to myself, well, I've just seen the best Arsenal I've seen in years with Kai Havertz up front. Why can't we get somebody similar, but that can run faster, kick the ball harder, and really is a true 9? So and that time, FK, the relief clause was around early 40s. Remember that? 42 mil?
Yeah.
So he was my choice. And then he sort of didn't want to take it for whatever reason, depending on what you want to read. And then we started to get into this season, and we little look at him in January, look at Ollie Watkins in January. Numbers are too heavy, didn't want to let him go. Totally understandable. Come back this summer, and I'm still with Sesko. I'm still with him. And I know there are numbers of Gyökeres are out there, and I know all of those stuff. I've seen Gyökeres live myself, and he's a player that can move and smash that ball with both feet. But Sesko, I think sometimes in football, it's what you don't know that's exciting. So was in LA in the summer, watched Miles and Ethan play, a couple of youth players, looked really good. Looking at Miles playing for England now, how I did not know that was coming. Yeah. And I think I know what I'm talking about. I did not see that coming. I have a feeling with Sesko, there's something out there that we don't know yet. And once he gets his head right and mentally gets right, he's going to unleash on people. And he could be one of the best forwards in the world of his time. I really believe that. And so I want to see that. I want to see that happen at Arsenal, because that could take us somewhere. I remember when we were looking at Gabriel Jesus and Isak at a similar time. And mate, I was all for Jesus. All for him. I was thinking, yep, someone from the league, got to get him in. He came in, those first 3 months were just spectacular. Nobody sort of, this is it. We're going places. And then he got injured. And then you look at it, and you look at Mikel's sort of investment in number 9, and Jesus was it. And he spent a long time injured. So when people say, Arsenal is centre forward, need one for 3 years. No. We bought one. And he's not been able to deliver on the pitch and stay on the pitch. And now you look at the other guy we could have got, we weren't sure about, in Isak. He was a bit heavier in price. And then you look at his ascension, and you say to yourself, sometimes you have to invest in youth and potential. And I think Sesko's got significant potential. And once he settles into a group, which we've got time for him to do, because we've got Kai Havertz, I don't think I know quite fully how far he could go. So that's my bet. Whereas I think I know Watkins, I think I know Gyökeres, but I don't know Sesko. So for me, we want the biggest things in the world game. I think go for the guy at the biggest ceiling.
I describe Arsenal as being starved for a few weeks and standing at the front of a buffet line, and we have an option of chicken, beef, fish, and it's a bit like, just fill your boots and feast. I think any of these guys could come in and do a job. Sesko does excite me because of his just ceiling, like you say, and project potential. Gyökeres is just a goal machine, and he has speed and power, and I think he'd be just fine at Arsenal. One sort of final question. I mean, great that you've got Sesko as your sort of, the one that excites you. What's more important to you, an established and expensive number 9, or actually someone like a Rodrigo to come in as a wide player, or both?
Yeah, well, the position that worries me the most is not the centre forward because all of these three would work, in my opinion. And it's just a matter of which one you like. You know, so yeah, steak, chicken, or pork, mate. You make your choice, right? So basically, I like Sesko the most, but it wouldn't bother me the others. The left wing now, it's much more of a worry for me, and the reason why, FK, every game we play, we move the ball through the centre of the pitch, and then we go wide, and we ask that wide player to do quite a lot. We ask him to be in our 4-4-2 off the ball. We work them up and down the line. Sometimes they're in our back six when we're defending late in the game. We ask them to run into behind and we ask them to receive the ball and beat two men every single time and cross it into the box. We ask a lot of that player. And of all the wide options that we have, I don't know which one can do all of those things. I don't. And I don't know which ones I trust. I think I like Williams the most, but I don't like his backstory regarding does he really want to leave. Rodrigo, depends what you read. He wants to leave, wants to stay, happy, unhappy. I think he'd be a good option off the left. Again, we don't know we know what he can do off the left, but to be discovered. Rafael goes walking. You see him plays for 20 minutes, best player on the pitch, and the rest of the time can't find him. You tell me, Anthony Gordon, watched him against Arsenal this year, played great, gave the ball away, we scored. Good player. I thought he was sleeping thinking last night, but let's not mess about with that. England are they should all been on their holidays, full stop. Right? Let's not reach conclusions with that. Semenyo, I quite like him. Very powerful when he came on against us this year. I don't know which one. I don't know which one. I'm not even close. And I think that is as important. A dual-sided wide man to bring into this group, I think is very important to give us the depth. And I don't know which one I like. So maybe Rodrigo. Maybe he's the one I think he might have the best motivation if Madrid drop him, which they may do. But I'm not sure.
Well, it's of paramount importance, and I completely agree with you. To have depth beyond Martinelli and Trossard and Saka on the other side is key. David Ornstein keeps referencing Anthony Gordon, but nobody else is sort of picking that up. I wonder if that's one to watch. And like you say, Brian Mbermo was a player that I quite liked. I would have loved to have had him. But of course, Saka's got the right-hand side nailed down. And whether it's Semenyo or Rodrigo, one of the others, there are options out there. And that's, I think, where we're going to leave it. So yeah, really, really love your insight. You can probably tell, most people I sort of have a conversation with, but when you start speaking, I'm just listening mode. I love it. It's like an education. I got one last question before we go. Is it going to be our year next year? And you fully behind the gaffer? I know you said you're an Arsenal man and you invest in the project, but is he the guy that's going to take us to the top? Is he going to shut everyone else up and have that final laugh, Clive?
I think he's a very intense guy, and I so want him to win because I think he deserves to win. I think he's an exceptional coach. He's probably had his best coaching year, if not managing year, if that makes sense. Because when you're coaching people that are either half injured, your centre forwards are all gone. You got a centre mid up front. You made that work, And Saka, we saw Saka. We know he's not right. Odegaard took a long time to be not right, and we managed to bumble our way to second. And a lot of that's down to us. Strategy, structure, principles, which he put in place. So from a pure coaching, he probably had his best year because all his tools weren't there and they weren't healthy and they weren't in condition. But from a management side of things, I think we've got to read the future better, and I think his position and validation at Arsenal will be defined by what happens next. Because we all got goldfish memories, right? What he's done to get us here, we've forgotten that. We've just seen Crystal Palace, Spurs, Newcastle, everybody win something. Liverpool, everybody win. Chelsea, they all win. 5 teams have won. If I said to you start last season, 5 teams can win the trophy this year, and one of them is not going to be Arsenal, and Arsenal not going to be one of them, you're not having that, are you? And so, although I'm not for all, I like progression, and I really love it. I love the journey. I love talking about it. But I had an experience this year at the Emirates when the Arsenal women won the Champions League, who I go and watch quite regular. And I tell you what, mate, it was emotional. And this winning thing is quite good. It really is. And competing is good. But this winning thing is really, really good. And I want that for everybody. Forget myself. I want it for everybody because I think this club would explode. It would absolutely explode. And so I want that. And I want it to happen with him and this group. If they all re-sign, don't worry about what I think. If all the players re-sign, that is the greatest indicator that everyone's on board with him. And the player-manager relationship is all that counts. So that's where I am.
I love it, Clive. I crave a Premier League trophy so badly. You and I know what it feels like, and so many of our fans haven't experienced that. These are the best years they've seen, so I hear you. Listen, if anybody wants to follow Clive, he's available on socials at Clive PAFC. Also, such a memorable member of the cast and crew at the Arsenal Vision podcast. Do check that out. Clive, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the remainder of the summer. Enjoy the various sports that you're going to tune into. I really appreciate your time. For those of you watching, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video and all that sort of stuff. Get involved in the chat, and we'll be back tomorrow with AFC James off X to get his thoughts on the transfer market. Until next time, bye for now.